The black woman sitting in the back rows of the courtroom had noticed the dismissive looks the judge kept throwing her way. Maya Thompson had been in countless courtrooms during her 10-year career as a federal prosecutor, but today she had intentionally dressed in civilian clothes, a simple blazer, notepad, and silence. Judge Robert Harrison, on the other hand, saw her as just another member of the troubled families he often encountered in his courtroom. He had no idea she was a Harvard Law School graduate, that she had won hundreds of federal cases, or that the very next morning she would be filing a federal case against him in this same courthouse building. It wouldn't be Harrison's ruling that day that would end his career, but the degrading words he spoke, because 24 hours later, when the woman he had dismissed appeared before him as a federal prosecutor, he would learn where real power in the justice system truly resided. Maya Thompson could hear the echo of her footsteps as she walked through the marble-floored corridors of Jefferson County Courthouse. It was 2:30 in the afternoon, and the courtroom was already crowded. Lawyers, plaintiffs, witnesses, and family members sat in wooden pews, waiting for their cases to be called. Maya took a seat in an empty spot at the very back of the room and observed her surroundings. During her 10-year career as a federal prosecutor, she had been in countless courtrooms, but today was different. Today she wasn't here for her professional life, but for a personal matter. Her brother Marcus had a traffic case. The speeding charge seemed simple enough, but according to what Marcus had told her, the police officer who had stopped him had been unnecessarily harsh. Maya had come to make sure her brother's rights were protected. However, she had deliberately chosen to wear civilian clothes, a simple navy blazer, white shirt, and notepad. No federal identification, no official insignia. She just wanted to observe. Judge Robert Harrison, 58 years old, gray-haired, sat on the judge's bench with a self-satisfied demeanor. He had 25 years of court experience, but it was mostly limited to small cases in Jefferson County. He had never worked in federal court. When he lowered his glasses to the tip of his nose and scanned the room, his eyes fell on Maya, and he immediately categorized her. Probably someone's mother, sister, or friend. One of the types he frequently saw in his courtroom. "Thompson case," called out court clerk Mrs. Patterson. Marcus Thompson stepped forward in his suit. Maya noticed her brother's hands trembling slightly. Marcus had never been to court before, and his nervousness was evident in everything he did. The lawyer standing beside him looked old and tired. "Miss Thompson," said Judge Harrison, without looking at his file, "you're here for exceeding the speed limit by 25 miles. Guilty or not guilty?" Maya noticed the indifference in the judge's tone. He hadn't even looked at the case yet, as if he had already decided the outcome. Marcus's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. The radar device's calibration." "Radar calibration?" Harrison rolled his eyes. "I've been hearing these kinds of excuses for years. Is the police officer here?" Officer Davidson stood up. He was in uniform and looked confident. "Yes, Your Honor." "What happened that night?" Harrison asked. "I followed the suspect's vehicle on Highway 9. Radar showed 85 miles, limit was 60. I stopped him and issued a ticket." Maya was taking notes on the inconsistencies in the officer's statement. There were contradictions with the story Marcus had told her. However, Harrison continued without going into any details. "Mr. Thompson, do you accept this charge?" Marcus's lawyer stood up again. "Your Honor, my client says he wasn't going more than 75 miles that night. Also, Counselor, tell your client to stay quiet," Harrison sharply interrupted. "Don't let him speak before I finish my questions." Maya frowned. The judge's behavior was far below professional standards. Such an attitude would never be accepted in federal courts. Harrison turned to Marcus. "Mr. Thompson, does anyone in your family have a criminal record?" Maya's heart raced. This question was completely irrelevant and illegal. She wanted to stand up, to object, but she restrained herself. She was still in the observation phase. "No, sir," Marcus replied, his voice shaky. "Are you sure? You grew up in this neighborhood, didn't you?" "The Thompson family? I know that name." Maya understood what the judge was implying. The Thompson family was a respected family in Jefferson County. Their father had been a teacher for 30 years. Their mother was a nurse at the hospital, but Harrison was implying as if they had some criminal background. Your Honor, the lawyer tried to object. These questions are not related to his case. Counselor, I know what questions to ask. I've been doing this job for 30 years. Harrison turned back to Marcus. Miss Thompson, young men like you usually like to drive fast cars. Admit it, you made a mistake. Serve your punishment. It's that simple. Maya couldn't stand it anymore. The judge was judging her brother without any evidence. She stood up. Your Honor, I have an objection. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to Maya. Harrison lowered his glasses and looked at her. Who are you? Are you a party to this case? I am Marcus Thompson's sister, and from what I've observed, the questions being asked regarding the case are contrary to legal procedures. Harrison's face reddened. Ma'am, it's not your job to give law lessons here. Sit down, or I'll have you removed from the courtroom. Your Honor, our constitutional rights. Enough. Harrison slammed his gavel on the desk. Mrs. Patterson, remove this woman from the courtroom. She's disturbing the peace. Maya remained calm. I'll leave. However, I'd like to remind you that this hearing is being recorded, and every word you say is on record. Harrison glared at her. Are you threatening me? No, I'm just stating facts. Maya took her bag and left the room. Behind her, she could hear Harrison's angry voice. Mr. Thompson, guilty. $500 fine and 6 months license suspension. Next case. Maya waited for Marcus outside the courthouse building. Her brother came out 20 minutes later, disappointed. Maya, thank you so much. You were right, Marcus. This judge behaved with prejudice, both toward you and toward me. So, what are we going to do? Maya smiled. Tomorrow morning I'll be returning to this building, but this time in a slightly different capacity. The next morning, a different scene was being played out in the federal courtroom on the 3rd floor of Jefferson County Courthouse. Maya Thompson, dressed in her official federal prosecutor attire, sat at the table across from the judge's bench with thick files in hand. Her assistant prosecutor, David Chen, was beside her. The door opened and Judge Robert Harrison entered, this time as a defendant. A federal investigation had been launched, and Harrison faced charges of abuse of office, violation of constitutional rights, and unethical conduct. When Harrison saw Maya, he froze. His face went pale. Federal Judge Martha Williams took the bench. Federal Prosecutor Thompson read your charges. Maya stood up. Her voice was strong and clear. Your Honor, we bring federal charges against Jefferson County Court Judge Robert Harrison. Charges of abuse of office, violation of citizens' constitutional rights, unethical judicial conduct, and discrimination. Harrison's lawyer stood up. Your Federal Honor, my client denies these charges. Judge Harrison. Federal Judge Williams turned. Have you heard the charges? Harrison was still in shock. He kept staring at Maya. Yes, Your Honor. Maya opened her file. Your Federal Honor, we have complete records of the hearing that took place yesterday in Jefferson County Court. These records show that Judge Harrison violated constitutional procedures, behaved with prejudice toward the defendant, and obstructed the right to fair trial. Now let's return to that critical moment once again. Yesterday, Harrison had removed Maya from his courtroom without knowing who she was. Today, he was learning that the same woman was a federal prosecutor and held his fate in her hands. It was now very clear where real power in the justice system lay. Maya continued. Judge Harrison used these statements in the Marcus Thompson case yesterday. The Thompson family, I know that name, making accusatory implications about the defendant's family background. This is a clear violation of the right to fair trial. Federal Judge Williams took notes. Continue, Prosecutor Thompson. Additionally, he asked questions unrelated to the legal grounds of the case. Does anyone in your family have a criminal record? Such questions violate the 14th Amendment of the Federal Constitution. Harrison's lawyer intervened. Objection. Your Federal Honor, my client has been performing his duties properly for many years. Objection overruled, said Federal Judge Williams. Prosecutor Thompson. Do you have evidence? Maya placed the recording device on the table. Yes, Your Honor, we have the complete audio recording of yesterday's hearing. We're also presenting court transcripts and witness statements. When the audio recording began to play, Harrison's words from yesterday echoed through the courtroom. Counselor, tell your client to stay quiet. Young men like you usually like to drive fast cars. Patterson, remove this woman from the courtroom. Federal Judge Williams stopped the recording. Judge Harrison, what do you say about these statements? Harrison stood up, sweating. Your Federal Honor, I was just trying to maintain order. That lady, I mean Prosecutor Thompson, you're saying, he began to stutter. Maya calmly intervened. Your Federal Honor, Judge Harrison's use of that lady shows his attitude even now. Yesterday he saw me as a member of troubled families. Today he learned I'm a federal prosecutor. This is proof of how prejudice leads to blindness. Federal Judge Williams spoke in a serious tone. Judge Harrison, if you want to serve as a judge in federal court, you must protect constitutional rights. However, the attitude you've shown indicates you cannot bear this responsibility. Harrison's lawyer made one last attempt. Your Federal Honor, my client is a respected judge with 25 years of experience. This is an isolated incident. Maya stood up. Not isolated, Your Honor. We examined 47 rulings from Judge Harrison's court over the past 6 months. Sentences given to black defendants were on average 34% harsher than those given to white defendants. This is evidence of systematic discrimination. The room fell silent. Maya placed the statistics on the table. These numbers are well above federal justice standard. They show that Judge Harrison has been behaving with prejudice not just yesterday, but for years. Federal Judge Williams turned to Harrison. What is your response to these allegations? Harrison was now completely broken. I didn't realize it. It wasn't intentional. We're not looking for intent, Judge Harrison, Maya said. We're looking for results, and the results are clear. Dozens of citizens' rights have been violated. Federal Judge Williams made her decision. Judge Harrison, you are being removed from your position. It has been determined that you are not suitable to serve as a judge at the federal level. Additionally, the Ethics Committee will conduct a detailed investigation regarding you. Harrison collapsed in his chair. Yesterday he thought he was the absolute ruler of his courtroom. Today his career was over. As Maya gathered her files, she looked at Harrison one last time. Judge Harrison, yesterday you told me it's not your job to give law lessons here. You were right, because my job is to enforce the law. When the hearing ended, Maya walked through the marble-floored corridors of the courthouse building, thinking. Yesterday she had walked these same corridors in civilian clothes, been dismissed by a judge, and removed from the courtroom. Today, with her federal prosecutor identity, she had ended that judge's career. Marcus was waiting for her in front of the courthouse building. Maya, how did it go? Harrison has been removed from office, and you've gained the right to a new hearing, this time before a fair judge. I don't know how to thank you. Maya smiled. You don't need to thank me. I just did my job, ensuring justice. As they talked, they saw Harrison leaving the courthouse building. The man had lost the authority and respect he had built over years in a single day. He looked at Maya, bowed his head, and walked away without saying anything. Do you feel sorry for him? Marcus asked. Maya thought. No. The only thing I'm sorry about is how many people's rights have been violated because of judges like him. Harrison is only sorry because he got caught, not because of what he did. 3 months passed. Maya's Harrison case was recorded as an exemplary case in the federal justice system. It became an important precedent in the fight against judicial discrimination. A new judge was appointed in Jefferson County, Judge Sarah Mitchell, a legal expert with 15 years of federal court experience, specialized in protecting constitutional rights. One day, while Maya was working in her office at the Federal Department of Justice, her assistant David Chen knocked on the door. Maya, you received a thank you letter. The letter was from a mother in Jefferson County. Her son had also been unfairly given a harsh sentence in Harrison's court. Thanks to the investigation Maya had opened, his case was retried, and he was acquitted. Dear Prosecutor Thompson, you saved my son's life. Because of Harrison, he was going to serve 3 years in prison. Now he's free and started college. I don't know how to thank you. When Maya finished the letter, she felt her eyes welling up. One of the most beautiful rewards she saw while serving as a federal prosecutor was knowing she had ensured justice. David Chen asked, "Do you regret it? I mean, if you hadn't gone to court that day, nothing would have happened." Maya shook her head. "No, David. If I had chosen to stay silent that day, Harrison would have continued to violate more people's rights. Sometimes you have to take personal risks to ensure justice. But the risk was great. If Harrison had recognized you, even if he hadn't recognized me, it would have been fine, because I'm confident in my own identity. Being a federal prosecutor doesn't make me valuable, defending what's right does." That evening, when Maya got home, her mother called. "Daughter, I read it in the newspaper. We're so proud." "Mom, No, Maya, not just. You became the pride of us and this community. Your father is very proud too. He keeps telling his friends." Maya smiled. Her mother was right. What happened wasn't just about Harrison. This was a victory for everyone who stood against injustice in the system. 6 months later, Maya was invited to speak to graduates at Harvard Law School. In her speech, she told about the Harrison incident. "Dear students, in law school they taught you theories, but the biggest test you'll face in real life is the courage you'll show when standing up to the powerful. In that courtroom, I could have chosen to stay silent. No one had forced me to speak. But if you stay silent when you see injustice, your diploma will only make you money, not contribute to society." At the end of the speech, a student asked, "Prosecutor Thompson, do you know what Harrison is doing now?" Maya thought. "Last I heard, he was working at a private law firm. His judicial career ended, but his life continues. I hope he learned from what he experienced." Indeed, Harrison had undergone a major change after what he experienced. While working at the private law firm, he began collaborating with foundations that provided legal aid to minority communities. The lesson Maya had taught him didn't just end his career, it also led to a character transformation. A year later, Harrison wrote a brief letter to Maya. "Dear Prosecutor Thompson, I apologize for the mistakes I made in court that day. When you didn't judge me, I regained my faith in justice. The only thing I'm trying to do now is to compensate for the damage I caused in the past. Thank you." When Maya read the letter, she could sense the sincerity. Harrison had truly changed. Perhaps justice wasn't just about punishment, but about showing people the right path. Finally, this incident that happened to Maya was much more than just a conflict in a courtroom. It was proof that every person has a right to equal justice, how prejudices lead to blindness, and that real power comes from knowledge and character. That day, Harrison had seen Maya as a member of troubled families, but Maya was a federal prosecutor in one of society's most respected professions, protecting the justice of her country. This mistake was an example of the trap that not only Harrison, but everyone who approaches with prejudice falls into. Maya Thompson's story was the story of those who don't stay silent when faced with injustice. In that courtroom, she could have stayed quiet and said, "This doesn't concern me." But justice was everyone's responsibility. And Maya didn't hesitate to shoulder this responsibility. Her federal prosecutor identity didn't give her power, she was already powerful. The federal prosecutor title just made this power official. Real power was in the courage to defend what's right. The story ends here, but Maya Thompson's faith in justice and her struggle continued. Because justice was a value that needed to be protected not just in courtrooms, but in every moment of life. And sometimes, 24 hours was enough to ensure justice. As long as the right person showed courage at the right time, in the right place. The ripple effects of Maya's case continued to spread throughout the American justice system. Within 6 months, the Department of Justice launched a comprehensive review of judicial conduct in district courts across 15 states. Maya was appointed as the lead investigator for this initiative, which became known as the Fair Justice Protocol. During this investigation, Maya discovered that Harrison's case wasn't isolated. In Alabama, she found Judge William Crawford, who had been systematically giving harsher sentences to minority defendants for over a decade. In Texas, Judge Patricia Wells was dismissing domestic violence cases involving black women at rates 300% higher than cases involving white victims. The pattern was clear and disturbing. What we're seeing isn't just individual bias, Maya explained to a congressional committee 6 months later. This is institutional blindness that has infected our courts at every level. The hearing room was packed with journalists, civil rights activists, and legal scholars. Maya sat at the witness table, composed and authoritative, as she presented her findings to the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman Rodriguez, Maya addressed the committee chair, our investigation revealed that in counties with populations over 100,000, black defendants received sentences averaging 28% longer than white defendants for identical crimes. This isn't speculation. This is mathematical certainty of systemic bias. Congressman Rodriguez leaned forward. Ms. Thompson, what do you recommend we do about this? 3 immediate actions, Maya replied without hesitation. First, mandatory bias training for all sitting judges. Second, algorithmic review of sentencing patterns in every district court. Third, creation of citizen oversight committees with subpoena power. From the gallery, she noticed a familiar face. Robert Harrison sat in the back row, taking note. After his removal from the bench, he had enrolled in a racial justice advocacy program and was now working with the Southern Poverty Law Center. Their eyes met briefly, and he nodded with what appeared to be genuine respect. After the hearing, Harrison approached Maya in the corridor. Thompson, I wanted you to know, I've been working with families affected by judicial bias, including families who appeared in my courtroom. His voice was steady, but Maya could hear the weight of regret. I've personally apologized to 43 individuals. It's not enough, but it's a start. Maya studied his face. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something she hadn't expected: humility. What changed your mind, Harrison? You did. When you stood up in my courtroom that day, you showed me something I'd forgotten. That courage doesn't come from a title. It comes from conviction. 3 weeks later, Maya received an unexpected phone call at her office. The caller ID showed White House. Ms. Thompson, this is President Williams' office. The President would like to meet with you regarding your judicial reform proposals. Maya found herself in the Oval Office 2 days later, sitting across from President Sarah Williams, the first black woman to hold the office. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Maya, the President said, your work has caught the attention of everyone who cares about justice in this country. I want to offer you a position, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. Maya was quiet for a long moment. It was the kind of appointment that could reshape her entire career, give her the power to implement reform on a national scale. Madam President, I'm honored, but I need to ask, will I have the authority to hold judges accountable regardless of their political connection? President Williams smiled. That's exactly why you're the right person for this job. As Maya walked out of the White House that afternoon, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. It started with a simple decision to attend her brother's traffic hearing. One moment of refusing to stay silent had led to this, the opportunity to reshape justice for millions of Americans. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Saw the news about your White House meeting. Mom's crying happy tears. Dad's telling everyone at church. We're proud of you, sis. But Maya's proudest moment came a month later, at the graduation ceremony of the first class of the National Judicial Fairness Academy, a program she had designed to train judges in recognizing and combating unconscious bias. The keynote speaker was retired Supreme Court Justice Patricia Chen, but Maya was presenting the Special Recognition Award. As she looked out at the audience of 2,000 newly trained judges, she saw faces of every color, age, and background. These were the men and women who would carry forward the mission of equal justice. Ladies and gentlemen, Maya announced, this year's Distinguished Service in Judicial Reform Award goes to someone who proved that redemption is possible, that people can change, and that admitting mistakes is the first step toward making amends. Robert Harrison. The applause was respectful, but cautious. Harrison walked slowly to the podium, visibly emotional. 2 years ago, he began, his voice barely above a whisper, I was removed from the bench for bias and abuse of power. I thought my story was over, but Maya Thompson taught me that endings can become beginnings. Today, I stand before you not as a judge, but as someone who has learned that real justice requires constant self-examination. He paused, looking directly at Maya. I spent 25 years on the bench thinking I was dispensing justice. It took one woman's courage to show me I was often dispensing injustice instead. The families I wronged will never fully heal from my actions, but perhaps the work we're doing now can prevent other judges from making my mistakes. When the ceremony ended, Maya felt At's affection deeper than any courtroom victory. This was what real change looked like, not just punishing wrongdoers, but transforming the system that created them. That evening, Maya stood in her apartment, looking out at the Washington, D.C. skyline. On her desk were congratulatory letters from law schools, civil rights organizations, and ordinary citizens whose lives had been touched by her work. But the letter that meant the most was handwritten on simple notebook paper. Dear Ms. Thompson, my name is Jessica Martinez. My son was sentenced to 5 years in prison by Judge Harrison in 20. Thanks to your investigation, his case was reviewed and his sentence was reduced to time served. He starts college next month. I wanted you to know that your courage gave my family back our future. Thank you for not staying silent. A grateful mother. Maya folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer, next to dozens of others like it. These letters reminded her why the work mattered, why standing up in that courtroom had been worth every risk. As she prepared for bed, Maya reflected on the words she would speak tomorrow at another congressional hearing. The fight for judicial reform was far from over, but the foundation had been laid, and it all started with one simple principle. When you see injustice, you don't look away. You stand up. You speak out. You act. Because sometimes, the distance between witnessing unfairness and changing history is just the courage to say, this isn't right. Maya Thompson had proven that one voice, raised at the right moment, could echo through the halls of justice for generations to come.